October 16, 2024, and we do have a couple of preambles before we actually get to the projects. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County, vis a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. Also, just for some clarity, we want to be sure it's understood about your preservation permit. If you are approved for a preservation permit today and you are not the contractor, please know that it is your responsibility to make sure that the contractor has a copy of the preservation permit before beginning work. The preservation permit includes items that require final approval and inspection requirements. The final drawings are part of the preservation permit. Following the preservation permit will save you time and money as enforcement of violations and time that you would come before us can sometimes be lengthy and expensive process. The preservation permit is not a building permit. No work can begin without the appropriate review and approval by the Metropolitan Department of Codes Administration. And also, if you are coming to the podium that Melissa is in front of, please give your name and how you are affiliated to the project so that we know for public hearing how you are speaking in front of the public hearing. Okay, on our agenda is adoption of September 18, 2024 minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Second. Commissioner Williams has made the motion and second by Commissioner Cotton. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, that motion passes. Ms. Ziegler, are there changes to the agenda for today?
Yes. Off the agenda are 1301 McKinney and 1807 Lakehurst Drive. So that's cases 8 and 22. And 1906 Fifth Avenue. We asked that that be pulled from consent and heard at the end of the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Melissa, I think you have the floor.
Is this on? Great. Okay.
Do you want to vote on those revisions? I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
Oh, yes. Sorry for that. All in favor? Commissioner Mosley has made the motion and Commissioner Cashin has made the second. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes.
Okay. I will present the consent agenda. As a notice to the public, the items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. We will read out each case one by one. If you are in opposition of the project, please raise your hand when we call out the case. Items removed from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. So the items on the consent agenda include the 36 administrative permits issued for the prior month, 1201 Gartland Avenue, an application for an outbuilding. Again, if you want this to be removed from the consent agenda, please raise your hand.
Or stand.
615 Woodland Street. 1706 Russell. 1329 McChesney Avenue. 1914 Beechwood Avenue. Again, 1914 Beechwood. 417 4th Avenue North. 4400 Utah Avenue. So staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with the applicable conditions, finding that these applications meet the design guidelines for the respective districts.
Thank you, Melissa. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Vice Chair Stewart, second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, that motion passes. Thank you. Ms. Ann?
Just a reminder about the presentation and hearing process for the Historic Zoning Commission. First, the staff will present a summary of the project and a recommendation. Then the applicant, including all members of their team, may present for up to 10 minutes. The applicant may ask to save 2 of the 10 minutes for rebuttal for a public comment if there is public comment. After the applicant presents, there is time for public comment, and each member of the public may speak for up to 2 minutes, although groups such as neighborhood groups may speak for 5 minutes if they've asked to do so prior to the meeting. The commission may ask follow-up questions of any presenter or member of the public at the end of their presentation or comment, as well as during its own deliberations. The response time for these questions does not count against time allotments. Once the public hearing is closed, applicants and members of the public cannot initiate exchanges during the deliberation period without an invitation from the commission to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That's on. Yeah, that's on.
This one?
It stays on, yeah.
Okay,
You just have to advance the slides.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, 1225 6th Avenue North is 2 violations. First is the brick has been painted an inappropriate color. The design guidelines state that brick should not be painted. Should the brick have been previously painted, it should only be repainted a brick color. This brick was painted white without approval, and that is the building on the right there that we're talking about. The second violation is installation of windows of inappropriate material and design. The installed windows are of vinyl material with grids between the panes of glass. The preservation permit does state all the selections that should be approved prior to purchase and installation. These were not submitted or pre-approved. So staff recommends disapproval of the paint on the front and side windows with a requirement the violation should be corrected within 90 days with a red brick color for the exterior walls approved by the MHZC prior to application, and with windows for the front and sides of the building that are approved by the MHZC prior to purchase and installation.
Thank you, Scott. Is the applicant here? Please come forward.
My name is Dwayne Bell with Excel Builders of Tennessee. I'm the contractor. We submitted an application for the windows, and the feedback we received is said that because the windows that we install, we assume met the criteria because we sent everything in to them, and only feedback we received, we didn't receive any feedback at all about it, except that the window casing itself is all wood. It's just what was there. The windows have been replaced before. They weren't the original windows. So we replaced them back with what was there, and with the better material that was, better, I would say, because some of the windows was fogged. So we put the same windows back in, but if you look at it really close, you should see it really close. If you look at it really close, is that the windows are wood casings, wood frame, very little valve there. And before it had grids. Did you see that on the picture? I do have pictures to show you if you want to look at it. And before the building was unusable for the church that's next door. Now it's in really good shape. It's a nice building. And we feel, okay about it, except that we know that it's not all, the windows are not all wood, but it's very little vinyl there. I have some pictures here if you need something closer to look at. Now, the other issue about the paint color of the building, of the brick was painted before. It's the same color. The church owned that building next door. If you see the building next door, which is like a rose color picture there, the church, I think they took it down. So, do you need to have pictures? Some pictures?
You are welcome to submit that to.
Sure.
They have photos in their application as well.
I think these are better pictures. Sure. Thanks enough each one to look through.
Mr. Bell, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you have a preservation permit. So did you refer to that preservation permit in terms of the requirements?
Yes, we did. We had looked at that. We got the permit, yes, and I think that it was a sort of a breakdown in communication. I wanted to have the committee to meet with me, but it seemed like no one ever. We emailed back and forth, but we never talked. We never had a chance really to come out. Yes, they may have come out, but they never would meet me there. I asked to meet, to look at it, to go over, and we didn't go over it. So we assumed that everything was okay. I don't do a lot of things in the preservation area. Wasn't trying to override anything, but you can see if you look at those pictures real close. There's a big picture there. It's only about 4 windows in that building, and 40% of it's wood. Very little vinyl, and you really can't tell if they vinyl or not. They're and it's back of what was there before. It's better than what was there before. If you look at the building down the street in that same block, there are windows similar to that. And if you go back and look at the color of the building, yes, we didn't ask for approval for the color. I didn't know that you needed, if it was painted, the church requested that I paint the building, and I painted it. I didn't know that I needed to get the approval to paint it that white color and black trim. But there's other houses down the street the same color, black, white, and so forth. And it's, yeah, it is what it is with that. But we didn't get approval for it, and I'm not here. But the windows, I feel that are adequate if you look at it. Any questions for me? Sure.
Mr. Bell, I do have a couple of questions. One of and we don't have the preservation permit in our package, so we can't really see what was stipulated in there. We see them most of the time, but don't have it here.
Sure.
It looks to me like on the windows, it looks like the windows that were put in were a slightly smaller size than what was there before, because it looks like there's a 2x4 sort of wood frame built around that, around the sashes.
They're the same size. The windows are the same size as what was there before.
Okay. And then,
It's just that we left the wood framing of the windows and just took out the windows and had windows custom made to fit that particular opening. So we didn't add anything. We just took out the old windows and added that part there.
it also looks like there's a decorative piece that's added above the windows. Was that part of this project?
It was there before.
It was there before?
I just added, one side had it and one side didn't. If you look at the pictures, I think there's a picture in there that showed it.
Yeah, one of your pictures shows one with and one without.
Okay, well, it didn't have it before. We just added back what was there. We just made it to put the same design back that was there so it'd be uniform. And because the other one had written out and it wasn't usable. You can see, I think you see the picture. There's a picture there with where the salmon colored building. Did you see? You have that picture here? Okay.
We do.
We just added that part there and the part in the center was missing, put that back. And the church wanted, the members of the church wanted the building to look different than the church. They didn't want it to be the same color as the church. And that's why they asked me to paint it, the building. I mean, otherwise we left it like it was.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions? I have one question for you as well. Is your client in line with what the recommendation is because of the violation, like painting the brick to the correct color of design and getting with staff to be sure that the correct windows are approved?
Well, they are aware that what's going on here, but it will put, it is a church, which is a nonprofit. It would put a, I guess you'd say, a strain on their budget of what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just money that was happening. But we're willing to comply to make sure that we do what's necessary. But it will put a strain on them, and we're aware of what's happening with that.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. If anything else that you want to add?
Well, I wanted to know. I want to know if the commission will look at this and say that, if versus what was there before and what's there now, it's a 1,000% improvement from what that was there.
Sure.
Because it was turned down. Although I know it maybe not meet the guidelines, maybe they wouldn't get the prior approval to that. But there are things on that street, if you look at it, look up and down the street, there are a lot of different improvements that's taking place and are done. And I feel that that there are buildings that's painted that same color, that's painted white, down a brick that's painted white, the brick painted the salmon color that was there, brick painted even the other colors. So I feel that for us to go back and repaint it, it would put a strain on the church in trying to come up with some money to do it and to comply.
Okay. We hear you, and you will probably listen to the commissioners discuss. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners?
So if my eyes aren't completely failing me, I think there's a few things to note here that it appears there are windows that are original to the structure were an archtop window that had been infilled. If you look at the in the undated or unknown date photograph that is in the staff report, you can, at least I can see that there's an archtop on that window. The conjectural element that's been added that is shown from 2016 does show the decorative element above both windows. It somehow was removed in one picture, but I think there's, before this permitted work took place, it had, essentially just repainting what was already there. So I'm not sure. That would be a question for staff if that, given it's unknown when that was applied or when it was put up, that would be something, we'd have comment on. But those things said, it appears to me that the windows that were removed, or at least the windows that are in the 2016 photograph, are wood windows that are casement with true divided lights and, appear as a proper window. And I think Commissioner Stewart asked, how was it done that a replacement window was installed? It wasn't sort of taken out to the brick, but it was inserted in what a former opening was. At least that's what appears to me. And certainly we think been pretty consistent on how that works in historic districts. And in addition to the fact that simulated lights are something specifically prohibited in the guidelines as just findings of fact from the photographs.
Yeah, this is another example of a violation that why we added the preamble that you give before our meeting, that people, applicants really need to read their preservation permits and understand what they say and what they require. This being a historic preservation district, it's the highest level of protection that we have in our overlay districts. And I feel like it's important to stay true to the letter of what this guidelines say in terms of materials and high quality materials and high quality windows. And I feel like the staff report's kind of making a compromise that the rear windows don't need to be replaced, but the ones that are on public facing elevations do need to be. Makes sense to me and it's consistent with this commission's decisions when it comes to situations like this. So given what Commissioner Mosley just commented and what was in the staff, or what was written clearly in the permit, I don't really see how we have a choice to allow what's been installed.
Anyone else?
Just to clarify, we have nothing before us that indicates that the decorative elements are part of the package, right? That's not been stipulated as an issue. Is that correct?
That's correct. They've been there for some time, so they're not a part of this current violation.
Okay. I just want.
I do think one of the things that might be worth looking at is that the staff's recommending that these be corrected within 90 days. I think certainly that's doable with the paint without any real problem. With window delivery and measurements, all that, it might be more appropriate to go to 180 days for the windows, 90 days for the painted brick.
And also to give the church maybe some time for budgeting and things like that. Okay. 180 days. All right. Would you like to make a motion, Vice Chair?
Sure. With respect to 1225 6th Avenue North, I move that we accept the staff recommendation for this project with the change that the paint be done within 90 days, but that the windows be given 180 days for correction.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bell. We hope that you can continue to, we've closed public hearing, so if you have any comments, or please discuss it with the staff, and the project lead on that is Scott Keckley, and he's the gentleman right here on the table. So we appreciate your cooperation with that. Thank you so much.
All right. The next item is 1304 Ashwood Avenue. This is a request to retain work done differently than permitted. The house at 1304 Ashwood Avenue is a circa 1930 brick bungalow that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. The commission approved an addition with a setback determination as well as an outbuilding in May 2023. In June 2023, and there was a typo in your staff recommendation, I think it said 2024. It was June 2023. The commission approved a revised site plan that was based on a survey that was unavailable the previous month that further allowed for a further reduction of that left side setback based on the actual location of the historic house on the lot. Field staking and foundation inspections were approved in September and November 2023, respectively. A final inspection request was received in early September 2024, and at that point, the MHCC inspector found that the rear addition was not constructed as permitted. So here is the permitted right side elevation at the top of your screen, and below that, the as-built elevation that's being requested to be retained. The approved elevations were for an addition in which the roof form of the new construction was clearly distinguished from that of the historic house. As approved, the primary eave heights of the addition matched those of the historic house, which helped the addition to read as a 1.5-story addition to a 1.5-story house. As constructed, the dormers on the addition were connected to the existing side dormers on the historic house on both side elevations, which resulted in demolition of the historic roof form beyond what was approved. Staff finds that the additions as constructed does not meet the design guidelines for height and scale, location, roof additions, proportion and rhythm of openings, appropriate demolition. The addition was constructed with a connector piece that spans both the historic and addition roofs, resulting in a 38-foot wide dormer on each side elevation. The eaves of the connector tie into the eaves of the side dormers on the historic house and extend back to just below the eaves of the dormers on the addition. Consequently, the taller eave height now extends for most of the depth of the structure. Staff finds that a 38 span of continuous taller eave heights on both side elevations is not compatible with the scale of the historic home, since the dormer width along with the taller eave move the scale from 1.5 stories to more of a full 2 stories. Since the connector spans both the historic house and the addition roof forms, the resulting dormers are considered side dormer additions, since they are on that historic roof form. For side dormer additions, the design guidelines state that the dormers should be compatible with the skeleton design of the historic house, and say that this can be achieved by matching the skeleton design of an existing dormer on the house, which there were 2 examples of the gabled dormers on the historic house. The design guidelines also note that the number of dormers and their location and size should be appropriate to the style and design of the building, and that the face of the dormers should be fully glazed. Staff finds that the dormers, as constructed, are not compatible with the skeleton design of the historic house, as they are not at all similar in design or scale to the existing dormers on the house. They're significantly wider than the existing dormers, with a different roof form and faces that are not fully glazed. In addition, the dormers are constructed, increase the scale of the house from 1.5 to 2 stories. So the addition also impacts the side facades and the roof by obliterating the original roof form and introducing a new roof form that is not typical of the historic house or the historic character of the district. So here you can see on the left the roof plan that was previously permitted, and on the right, the addition as constructed. Staff finds that this demolition and alteration work does not meet the design guidelines. The house is a contributing house, so removing and altering the original roof form damages the historic integrity of the house. So these are the second floor plans submitted with both the original permit and the as-built drawings. Staff could not discern a difference here. Correspondence with the applicant indicated that the reason for these changes in the field were to raise the roof rafters between the dormers to achieve minimum head heights for the closet on both sides of the upstairs hallway. And he asserts that there would not have been adequate head height for the proposed stairway without this change. Since staff is not seeing any sort of change in the upper floor plan, we question whether or not the actual stairway, which is in the center of the structure, would have needed these changes to be functional. So regardless, if at any point an applicant realizes that the plans that are permitted, have been approved and permitted, no longer meet their needs, they should reach out to discuss possible solutions that can meet the design guidelines prior to making those changes in the field. So here are some aerials. The left was taken around February 2023, and on the right was flown March 2024 that further illustrates the impact of the addition as constructed on not only the historic roof form, but also the scale of the house overall. And here are photos where you can see the top left, you can see the left corner of the house. You can see the connection of the dormers, and then a photo of the right side from the rear. So in conclusion, staff recommends disapproval of the project as constructed, finding that the project does not meet section 2B1, A and B, and 2B2F for height and scale, section 2B2A for location, section 2B2A for roof additions, section 2B1G, which is for proportion and rhythm of openings, given the lack of glazing, and section 3B2B for appropriate demolition of the design guidelines for the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Furthermore, staff would recommend that the violation be corrected with the following items within 90 days of the commission's decision. 1, the windowless upper level dormers that connect the gabled dormers on the historic house to the gabled dormers on the addition be removed. 2, the side dormers on the historic house shall be returned to the original dimensions to match the plans previously approved by the commission, and that permit number is there. And 3, the ridge and rear eaves of the historic house shall be reconstructed with dimensions to match the previously approved plans as well. So the applicant's here. If you have any questions, that was a lot, so.
Thank you, Melissa. Sure. You may have some questions. Okay, applicant?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time today. My name is Dwayne Dixon. I'm with the Kingston Group. I'm the representative for the contractor on this project at 1304 Ashwood. I'm joined today by Mike McKnight, one of our team members, also with the Kingston Group. Also joined by Preston Quirk, who some of you may know, who was the architect that worked directly for the homeowner, Miss Meredith Seeley, who's also here today. But yeah, thank you for your time. We just want to elaborate on how we got here. First and foremost, the Kingston Group has been in business for 18 years. We've done a number of successful projects with the Historic Zoning Commission. And I don't recall in my 9 years with the company that we've ever had a misstep like this. And so we are deeply regretful that we are where we are. We got us here. And so all I can do this afternoon is try to elaborate on how we got there. I think this picture is one thing that I wanted to share. All of you have obviously lots of exposure to construction and remodeling. And this is what we faced in the winter months with the skies gray and the tarp over the house. In the middle of framing, we discovered that there were head height issues with the plan. And many of those things, as you know, cannot be fully discovered until demolition occurs. And so we're faced with some very tough field decisions to make. In our haste as problem solvers, we just dropped the ball on and re-engaging the Historic Zoning Commission. We completely take responsibility for that. So as I said, all I can really do today is help you understand what we were facing in the field and how our problem solving took place, and to try to address some of the things that Melissa has shared with you all. The floor plan first, maybe the easy one to clear up. There was at least some language in the report that it seems to suggest that we changed or somehow altered the existing front side dormers. In this area shaded in green, I just want you to understand and be clear on that there were no alterations to that existing street-facing dormer. And so you can see there the revised framing from underneath, the revised ridge beam, the non-compliant framing, that was all repaired from underneath, and those dormers did not change in their shape or scale in any way. The more difficult one is outlined as Melissa had. This red area here is where we ran into problems. You can see the stairwell is central to the house, and the corridor there beside the stairwell is central to the house. And I just wanted to illustrate that once the center ridge was framed, as you saw in that first picture, we started understanding that the rafters, and I can show you those here, as we lay in those rafters, there's head height issues at the main stairwell. And as we laid in rafters to the left, there are head height issues for the corridor beside the stairwell. And so that is what precipitated all the problem solving in the field to try to salvage this floor plan. Next, I'll show you sort of the head height issues. This is a picture, this gentleman that's framing here, we're looking at we're looking back at the existing dormers, and the yellow lines indicate, the lower line indicates the approved, historic approved rafter line, and then the upper yellow line is the solution, right? It's the field solution to raise these rafters, to create this connecting dormer, to allow for space in this room left of the stairs and this room right of the stairs. As you can see by the yellow squiggly lines, the floor plan, the approved floor plan would have been cannibalized using the approved rafter line. So we really had to create, in order to preserve this floor plan that was approved, we had to make this choice to raise the rafters to accommodate that. Again, we dropped the ball. At this point, we should have reengaged the commission and gone through, the necessary channels there to get this sort of change approved. But we obviously had the roof completely torn off and had to make some quick decisions. As was mentioned, we were current with our stake, the staking of the new proposed addition. We were current with our foundation inspection. And like I said, this just fell through the cracks in our haste. And so again, we apologize. Lastly, I'll show you, excuse me, from the street view, it is very difficult to see this from the street. You really have to work up the hill or down the hill in a side yard position to see the impact or see this change that is being highlighted. The connecting dormer itself is set back from the face of the other dormers, so it is very difficult to detect this from the main facade of the historic home in terms of its original integrity. So I can see that in the staff's report, there's a lot of talk about glazing and windows and scale, and perhaps the solution is to properly glaze this connecting dormer, to add windows, to create a look that's more compatible with the original integrity of the historic nature of the home. We want to comply, and I'm just here to help you elaborate on why we made those choices in the field. But it certainly wasn't in any intention to circumvent the effort to preserve this beautiful home. But we were faced with some tough choices in the spur of the moment. Questions?
I do have a question. The head clearance, I'm limiting, or I'd like to limit the question to specifically the circulation. So the landing at the top of the stair and the adjacent corridor that it engages. Can you describe the head height issues that you ran into isolated to that area?
Yes, sir. It would be in the neighborhood of 3 to 6 inches impeding metro building codes.
So that would be 6 feet 4 inches?
Thereabouts. On the right, in other words, your right shoulder, if you were coming up the steps, your right shoulder would be impeded from an appropriate head height in the neighborhood of 3 to 6 inches.
And is that at the beam depth or the rafter depth?
That's the rafter depth.
So the beam depth was even more, at least from the pictures. It appeared that the beam was dropped by 4 inches or so?
Correct.
6?
That's about right.
Okay. Was the second floor usable, and was there a stair that arrived at the second floor prior to any work that was approved with this permit?
Yes, sir. The stairs were there in a slightly different configuration, and the upstairs was a usable space.
Okay. But so the stairs were reconfigured as part of this project,
Yep.
and some new framing, we're probably dealing with a house of a circa that you got some 2x4, 2x6 rafters that were maybe 2 feet on center and
Correct.
sheathing and all the other things you normally see in this.
Yeah, it was a hodgepodge of non-compliant framing that was all repaired from underneath. But yeah, a lot of 2x4 rafters, shallow rafters, non-compliant framing that needed to be replaced.
And so in establishing the new ridge and the new rafters, that's where you ran into those issues.
Correct. And, again, to underscore, we were cognizant of the permitting. We were cognizant of what Historic had approved. Mike and I both recall our project manager on numerous occasions referring to the height of the ridge and not wanting to impact the ridge in our previous historic projects. We understand sort of the importance of working underneath the existing or pre-existing ridge lines. And so we were very aware, but we were trying to make this approved floor plan work for the homeowner and sort of the permitting process that she went through with the architect, Mr. Quirk.
And I'll say just specific to that, since I asked the question, is floor plans, while important and certainly very important to
Yes.
the owner and the applicant, we don't really review floor plans. And so while I think there's I have a better understanding of some of the problems you ran into, citing the approved floor plan to be the gate to open to get into some other violations is a little thin, just from my perspective.
Yeah, and certainly it would be extra thin if it weren't for the stairwell and the corridor. So I hear your point.
Sure. Where did you span in the, do you have, can we flip to the plan just so where were you spanning ridge from and to, and I maybe missed that in the photographs.
If we were to go back to this, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but this original ridge beam along this original dormer set carried the perpendicular new ridge toward the rear of the addition.
And are we looking at a picture out the front towards the street and it's hitting the separation between the two windows there? Looks like it's beefed up framing and the header is sort of.
Oh, right. You're looking out the side dormer. So you'd be
side.
looking side left.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Side left of the house.
Great. Thank you for the clarity.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question as well. On the plans that were submitted and approved, there's a note in the closet or storage area just to the left of that said 3 foot 3 inch high wall closet or storage. So as it's built, how tall is that exterior wall in there?
You have a recollection? Yeah, I believe our intent there was to set it at 60 inches.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Other questions?
Sure. In the design phase, how was this head height issue not recognized prior to construction?
Yeah, that's complex and remodeling from our experience. There was no way to evaluate it fully with drywall ceilings, and we're not quite sure what non-compliant framing existed behind those walls, so to speak. And so I think it was after demolition where we could fully see what we would need to be doing to restore to code minimums for building code minimums. I think that's where the decisions were made. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
For the explanation. We may ask you some more when we're in discussion, but at the moment, thank you. Open public hearing. Let me ask the timer, did he have any minutes for any rebuttal? He did. How many? Okay, great. So you would, if we have public rebuttal, you're welcome to come back up. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. So that 2 minutes is moot now. Okay. Commissioners.
How often does historic do inspections on these, at least theoretically?
And the permits spell out when inspections are required, and that's usually for the foundation staking, the foundation framing, and then final.
Was there a framing inspection done by historic on this?
I don't.
No, one was not requested.
It's a common occurrence in these cases. There's got to be a way to, this isn't just me bemoaning publicly, but it's frustrating, I know, for the homeowners and for us to get these, and the remedy being tear off half the house when an appropriate framing inspection done by historic would have, I assume, would have caught this, or at least left us without too many excuses. Frustrating.
And I think on the plans, it clearly states that the applicant's to call in for the framing inspection, but it doesn't happen unless they call it in, so.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, sure.
Well, and also the responsibility would be on, when the plans change, to contact Metro Historical, regardless.
Oh, not arguing responsibility or we should have caught it, but it's frustrating that everyone seems to get the proper codes inspections done, but not ours. and then all of a sudden, we've got a complete project with, I'm sure there's carpet and everything else in there, and now we're saying in 90 days do a 7-month construction job for hundreds of $1,000s that we're just going to light on fire. It's just not an ideal solution. I don't have a better one. I mean, I'd love for there to be some sort of way to tie in the 2 framing inspections in the system. I don't know why we can't do that, but that it's frustrating to get this well after the fact, with our solution being punitive, even if correct according to the design guidelines, which is the sole criteria of which we're supposed to judge. So I hate these cases.
I totally agree with you, and that's why a year or more ago, I called Robin. I said, I hate violations with passion. It's very difficult as a community member, as a neighbor in a conservation overlay who lives and knows people, and I see friends and neighbors here. To add at the beginning of our meeting, if you're getting a permit today, read it, okay? Read it to your contractor out loud. Know what goes into it, because we're your neighbors and we don't like doing this. So yeah, totally agree.
Just, from where we sit, we're asked to, or I think it would be the preference of the homeowner and those involved that we'd be asked to see some way through to allow for something from where I sit. Were this presented as the application, then the discussion would be different. And now we're sort of, armbarred into and compelled and feeling empathy, which I do feel, but what was constructed is not what we approved. And this is not I'm not throwing rocks or disagreeing with you. I hate them equally as well. And I think, notwithstanding the fact that there may well have been some head clearance issues, we don't have the option to, and the staff doesn't have the option to work with the applicant here to help solve those and bring something back to us that then it might cost some time in the schedule and might cause some general conditions to protect the open work. But it is quite frustrating.
One more and this might be for the applicant or the architect. Were we to accept staff recommendation and require a removal of these and a reconstruction according to the exact plans as approved, would that pass building codes?
We wouldn't want to speak for another department.
I'm sorry?
We wouldn't want to speak for another department.
Well, I don't think we'd want to put into some force of law a uncompliant building either.
The architect's here and can address that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, if I speak? Okay. Preston Quirk, the architect. The contractor was doing a pretty good job explaining this. I didn't feel I had a whole lot to add, but on the issue of the head height, there was an existing second floor. We talked about that. It had a stairway there. The stairway was reversed to run from it, previously loaded from the back and now loads from the front. But the head height was tight up there. It may have been, like we're saying, 6'4" or so on the sides, but a little higher in the middle. So I guess because it was there existing and it was close to compliance, I didn't think we were going to have an issue with using the space up there. I mean, the ceilings did slope and had a 3'3" knee wall or whatever Cyril mentioned off the plan. But so there might have been some portion near the two walls, because obviously it's highest in the middle, near the two walls, either side of the stair. It may have been slightly under 80 inches as a code height. And that's something that's hard to get an answer on. It's hard to get an inspector out there to look at it and say, is this going to be okay or not? And we didn't do that, and I guess that's why we're here. But I think to answer your question, it might be slightly under for maybe it's 8 to 10 inches on either side.
Until you all make some more comments, but, you know, this is hard for our commission. And I think that there's a process in how Commissioner Smith has brought in this conversation. This is why we have public hearing. So that, and hopefully, when these are recorded and, you know, your contractors, your architects, and your developers, whoever, can see this difficultness. And, yeah, we can deliberate about it and hope that we can find a solution, but we always can't. I mean, we try to be perfect, and we know that there's error, there's human error. And to have this, the empathy to the owner is really, as Commissioner Price has said too, because we're all neighbors and we don't want to be punitive. That's not what we're here for. But I think that our difficulty as a commission is to follow our purview, because there's someone else that's going to be an applicant that comes before us and says, I'm sorry, forgive us. And that's tough, you know, because this is what we do. So, you know, specifically to those who have been, and Preston, I don't want to put you on the stand here, but those who have been who have done work under overlays should know better to come back to staff. This was a big issue. Raising the ridge or doing these adjustments is a big issue. That's not small. That's not saying I'm going to redo a window or I'm going to repaint something or whatever. This is a big issue. So please, anybody who's listening to this, when you have an issue about construction and framing, you call the staff and you make sure that it's approved.
I'm making stuff up, and I know that's frustrating because I know staff spends a lot of time on these and puts hard work and hours into this. I think we agree that at the point they realized the problem, they should have come back to staff. Is there a way, and I'll make a motion, if it is, if it's not, then I guess we'll do what we're going to do anyway, to order the applicant to work with staff for 60 days on trying to find a compromise solution that they would have to lower, that they should have maybe come up with 6 months ago. With, if they can't come to a compromise in 60 days, then they have 90 days to just replace, to do what we were going to order them to do anyway. Because here's my thought. If they're going to have to do all this work, maybe there is a compromise. They can still get better use and enjoyment in a historical manner out of their floor plan. I know that's probably not a happy compromise for the applicant, but I'm trying to think of a way in which, well, it probably still required tearing up. I mean, I don't think there's any way to lower that without tearing it up. And I don't think, it doesn't sound like staff would support putting in more windows and calling it a day. But maybe there's something that they could lower it a bit more or bring it in more so that it isn't as across. I mean, there is a depth change. I don't know. I'm spitballing and it's probably useless, but these are, I'm sure I'm the least frustrated with these cases as the applicant and the inspector. I'm sure everyone's more frustrated than I am. But I hate for there to be us doing nothing, which just means forgiveness is an official policy of the committee or the commission, which I don't think is allowed. And, well, I guess you got to dynamite it being the answer, even though that's what we normally do. And I don't see a way in the design guidelines to avoid voting against that.
So I feel a lot of the same way. Part of the reason that I feel this way is that, you know, the framing members are larger today than they were in the old days. They've reconfigured the stair. If we act on the staff recommendation, they go back and do that, there's a pretty good probability that the building inspector will go out and turn it down because of insufficient head height over the stair. You know, that's one of the things they look at all the time. And so I do think there are some opportunities for some reconfiguration here that might help that out. It is a hardship if you have a head height problem like that. So I don't think we can solve it at this meeting. And so I think it has to work out. You know, part of it is that you have two closets up there on either side of the stairwell. One of them is about 80 square feet, the other is about 90 square feet. You know, originally the plan said 3.5 foot knee wall, and it's at 5 feet now. So I think that there is opportunity to pull those sides back in to make some adjustments. You know, I would personally prefer to see another plan, a corrective plan to appear before the staff and if needed, before this commission, rather than just a hard and fast denial at this point.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I would support some corrective action like that, because sometimes we see violations and staff report will say, well, it could be in compliance with, and maybe there's some opportunity to bring this further into compliance, pull the wall in more. The visibility from the public right of way is an issue, is a factor here, that it's not highly visible. So to Commissioner Smith's point, that maybe there's some sort of medium that we could come to. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase a motion like that. If
I'd like to add, I don't want to dance around the issue here. While there's empathy, the raising of the bearing height at these closets was to make them usable closets. I don't know that anybody would, I mean, that's what my eye tells me. And if I'm the homeowner, it's like, I don't want a closet that disappears into, you know, a knee wall at 20 inches or less, whatever it was. So to me, the middle ground, I don't care about the closets. I mean, that they're usable is that's a function of the plan. And the closets, they're just closets that are leftover space. I know the homeowner does, but that's not why we're here and why we are neighbors and all the things we've said before. I don't want us to get in this thin line of, well, because of this, then that. There's more than a couple of ways to have framed this and pick up 2 inches here or there in roof framing, in having distributing loads and reducing members and things like that. So I don't want us to be backed. I'm cautious for us to be backed into a corner because what was done wasn't what should have been done. I'm not opposed to a solution that would be proposed to the staff. I don't know that the staff can inform us in legal as to whether we can, you know, assign a commission member to review that so that the staff's not acting unilaterally without us. But I don't want us to lose sight of that. We didn't have the opportunity to help solve the problem. And that's the way it should work.
Duly noted. Okay, so on the staff recommendation, this is going to take some time. I want you all, the commission, to look at the timeline that it says a violation should be corrected. Is that ample? No. Okay. Then it would be in the motion.
Might I suggest a two-step process here? Mm-hmm. There's some finding of fact that the applicant and perhaps the inspector would need to, with the homeowner's, you know, permission, we need to get in and verify some things that I think folks are worried about, which is head height at the top of the stairs if this happens or if that happens. So there's some finding of fact that we can then all agree on, and then at that point we can start a ticking clock. That I would propose that we think of it in those ways if I'm hearing my fellow commissioners correctly, so that it would be a domino that would help provide what we're trying to solve for here, provide information.
Can I ask a question of legal?
Yes. Legal.
What is the process? What happens if we accept the staff recommendation, the applicant will be required to remove the violation and build it back to what was approved. Is that the proper? And we don't really get in the middle of whether that's the code or that's the codes department, right?
Correct. That's not your purview. All you do are historic guidelines and compatibility with historic guidelines. You don't have to adopt the staff recommendation. You can amend it, you can change it, you can have a different timeline.
Right.
Yeah.
You can add a condition.
You could also make a motion to disapprove, and they could still come back later with a new application. If you're open to that, I think staff would really appreciate some direction because there's multiple issues. And I think one of the ones that concerns us the most is the spanning between the old and the new. So we would love some direction as to what you'd be amenable. So we're not working with them, sending them down a road that then they come in and doesn't work.
Can I get a little more clarity, or can we get a little more clarity in the spanning between the old and the new? Staff analysis was very thorough, but if I understood the applicant's explanation and visually understood how it was framed, it appeared that, and if we need to pull the applicant back up to confirm what I'm about to state, it appeared that the ridge beam was framed on the existing dormers from outside of dormer to outside of dormer, parallel to the street or the front of the house. And that how it was framed off of that is where we would take issue with it sort of not making it so you could take the addition off and that the house remained. Is that what we're referring to in terms of it spans sort of front to back? That's way down in the weeds, but I'm wanting to understand that statement.
And
What we'd require them to do.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question, so tell me if this is the case. So there's the existing dormer on the historic house.
Front and two sides, right?
Just 2 sides.
Two sides, and then there's a new dormer on the back of the house, on the addition. And those are all fine. But then you have this dormer, windowless dormer in between the two that cuts off part of that original ridge and sort of changes that original historic form because it's spanning from old to new.
I see.
And I don't see a lot of room to make either one of them a little wider. Well, the historic one, you wouldn't want to do that, but the rear addition isn't going to be able to get much wider. And then you've got, so that's why we're asking for direction, because I'm not sure that I don't think that we have anything to offer. They may have some ideas, but then we won't know if it meets what you're looking for. And we could spend a lot of time and make them feel like they've got a chance, and then they come in and it isn't approved.
I don't know how to give that exact instruction, but I think that his staff found a compromise plan that they felt met the desired guidelines. Any of us would gainsay them.
What I'm saying that we haven't found a solution. I mean, we always try to do that before we come to you.
So
it would be on to
we've looked
to
at
them
we've
to-
looked at some compromise plans or way to adjust this besides demolition.
No, we haven't looked at any. We haven't come up with any to propose.
Well, I think that should be incumbent on the applicant.
Yes, I agree. And so my hope is that if that's the case, that you give us some direction so we're guiding them in a direction that will be approved or potentially approved. Does that make sense? Right now, we don't know which parts of this multi-prong issue is of greatest concern. I guess is one way to put it.
Sure. So I have one question too. Condition number 3 was that the ridge and rear eaves of the historic house be reconstructed with dimensions to match the plans approved. I didn't understand. I haven't been able to figure out how that's different. If you could explain that, it would be helpful.
I think the aerial is going to show that. So here you can see on the left, the historic house prior to the addition. You could clearly see that hipped roof form and kind of that the rear ridge is kind of going all the way back down to the rear corner of the historic house. You can see with the addition, that connecting dormer just kind of blew out that entire roof form on the rear. You do see a little bit of the kind of the eave at the rear of the historic house, but for the most part, you have the addition kind of taking over the entire rear roof form, which would not have met the design guidelines.
So the eaves are the dormer eaves, not the house eaves. That hasn't changed, has it, on the existing house, on the historic home?
Well, the dormer's been put on top of the historic house,
right.
so that was
Okay.
right. So
Can you show I'm sorry, I was trying to hit the button, like Jeopardy. Could you show the roof plan, the side by side? Yeah, thank you.
I think we've pretty well exhausted what our options are and abilities are as a commission. It's unfortunate all around. I don't see how we can approve this plan as constructed and be fair to previous applicants who we've denied the ability to do the same thing. So I think that we're going to need to move to approve the staff recommendation with the hope that maybe the applicant can bring forward a corrective plan that staff can feel comfortable enough to bring to us to make a decision on in another meeting.
We might ought to, in our motion, give them a bit of time to do that.
Sure. Yep. And we gave the windows of the Germantown Church 180 days. I'm happy to extend that for this applicant as well.
Well, there's 90 days. What are you thinking? 180? Does that
mean
7 months?
That was often.
Yeah.
If they're moving on the 90 days, if people are in good faith building, is that generally acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds like the applicant is, worthy and sounds like they could be credible.
I think they're very competent, and I'm sure they can do. I'm sure they can do this.
Yeah.
It's just.
Okay, so.
Well, and I would, from a personal standpoint in looking at this, my sense is that the biggest problem I see are that those walls of the dormers are so far out. They're recessed a little bit, but not much. And they're not very visible from the street. But to me, I would feel a whole lot better if they were pulled in. Right now, one of those closets is 8 feet wide. I mean, most of us never had an 8 foot wide closet when we were growing up. So I think bringing those closets into a minimum distance for them to work would be one thing that staff could consider. Now we deal with this once a month, and in our preparation for this, the staff deals with it every day of the week. So they are much more familiar with how all this works. But to me, that would be much more amenable to bring those in. I think dealing with the head height, the architect needs to come forward with a plan that would satisfy both, our guidelines and the code's guidelines. So to me, it would make sense to give them 30 days to come back to the staff with a plan. And short of that, then the staff guidelines would be in force so that they would have the time to really look at that. If we just agree with staff recommendations, it doesn't specifically say that they can come back with an alternative plan. So I would feel better if there was an alternative plan within 30 days, or if that's not met, then it goes to full staff recommendation. Is that a motion? Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Can I add one more comment to that, Cyril? I think, and this is, the staff's looking for guidance, and I'm sure the applicant would appreciate it as well. Staff spent a lot of their presentation discussing the separation and 1.5 stories. And I think any interruption of that, any interruption this tall, as tall as it is now, is in contradiction to that. So we need to be very specific about whether that's appropriate or not. And in terms of my guidance, I'm compelled by the staff's analysis and our analysis in approving what was presented, that original roof, they're separated dormers, they're not connected by siding and they're not connected by roof form, is I lean towards our original approval, not some middle ground between that as guidance. That's for me. We can certainly discuss that more here. We can't decide on something that we don't see, but guidance was asked for. I'm providing guidance from my perspective.
Okay. You do a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with respect to 1304 Ashwood Avenue, I move for approval of staff recommendations, staff conditions, and disapproval of the project with the caveat that the applicant be allowed a 30-day period to come back to the staff with alternative plans for review and analysis.
So that would be like number 4.
Yes, that'd be number 4.
Okay. Vice Chair has made a motion. Second by Commissioner Smith.
May I ask
Any other discussion?
May I ask a question about the 30 days?
Yeah.
So the next meeting is in 30 days, but the next application deadline is not in 30 days. So are you actually giving them more than 30 days, or do you want, okay.
Yeah. I think with the holidays coming up and all that, 30 days is probably what they would need to be able to evaluate on this.
So in other words, it wouldn't be heard at the next meeting with the 30 days.
Within this.
Commissioner Cotton?
So 30 days, then 90 days on top of that, and that's when it changes.
That's right. Yep. And if and they don't have to take the full 30 days. I mean, if they come up with a solution in a week or two and make the deadline for the next meeting, they can come back to the next meeting if we have to hear it. So.
Okay. All right, there's been a motion. There's a second. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for the discussion. And applicants, we appreciate your diligence, and please continue to work. We've got the timelines. So we're gonna have faith in you that you're gonna come up with a good plan. You're capable people. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next case is 2223 30th Avenue South. The house at 2223 30th is a circa 1931 vernacular house that contributes to the historic character of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. A rear upper level addition to an existing one-story addition was approved and permitted administratively in March of 2024. And in May of 2024, the Metro Historic Zoning Commission approved partial roof demolition and reconstruction for the historic roof on the house. In July 2024, the MHZC inspector found that the rear addition was not constructed according to plan, and that wall height had been added to the historic house during the roof reconstruction without approval. In August 2024, the violation was brought before the Metro Historic Zoning Commission with a request to keep the work as constructed. The commission voted to disapprove the work as constructed and determined that the violation was to be corrected within 90 days of the commission's decision. Following the commission's decision regarding the violation, the applicant hired a new designer to produce new reconstruction drawings for the project. The new designer verified all dimensions and put together a new drawing set for reconstruction. The designer also designed a new proposal for the rear addition. Today, the applicant requests that the previous decision to correct the violation be rescinded and replaced with a request for a revised upper-level addition to the existing one-story rear addition. The new addition includes a ridge raise. The application also includes reconstruction of the historic wall heights, window and door opening proportions, and the reconstruction of the original window and door opening proportions and locations, and the reconstruction of the front roof dormers on the historic house to correct the previous violation that came before the commission in August of 2024. This slide here is the proposed side elevations that the applicant is proposing today. And it includes the historic house reconstruction. It includes the lowering of the historic wall heights back to their original wall heights, the reconstruction of the original dimensions and locations, the reconstructed roof and roof dormers, and the newly proposed ridge raise, which ties into the proposed upper level rear addition. Staff finds that the proposal can meet the design guidelines for height and scale, location, roof additions, removability, materials, roof shape, proportion and rhythm of openings, and demolition. This is more of their drawings that they're proposing today. The slide shows the rear elevation as proposed on the top of the screen, and then the front elevation there on the bottom, and that again is with the lowering of the wall heights back to the original wall heights and the reconstructed dormers on the front. So in conclusion, and this is a lengthy recommendation, so I'll kind of walk through it. Staff recommends disapproval of the project as constructed, finding that the project as constructed does not meet the design guidelines for the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Staff recommends rescinding the previous August 2024 commission decision and to approve the proposed addition and historic house reconstruction with the requirement that the violation be corrected within 90 days of the commission's decision and with the following conditions. Those are on the screen here. Number one is that all wall heights on the historic house are returned to their original wall heights as shown on the drawings there. That the rear addition constructed without the permit is to be removed. Number three, all gable window openings are to be constructed to their historic locations and proportions as shown on the drawings, that's done when the historic roof is reconstructed. Number four is that the front dormers are reconstructed to their original dimensions, form, and pitch as shown on the drawings. And then 5 through 8 here are a little bit more standard conditions. 5 is that the HVAC is located behind the house or on either side. 6 is that the cladding should be smooth without an embossed grain. 7, paired windows shall have a 4 to 6 inch mullion between. And then 8 is about material reviews, our standard material reviews. So with these conditions, staff finds that the project as drawn today meets the design guidelines for the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Happy to take questions because I know that's a lot, and I know the applicant is here as well. So if you've got questions for them too.
Joseph, I've got one that maybe is a little bit of a preemptive question. I think
Okay.
in terms of, many liberties could have been taken given the raising of the exterior walls and things like that. Is there some bit of documentation that the staff can feel comfortable that we don't end up with a, like implosion and then a reconstruction of the historic house?
Something to secure when they,
just some documentation so that we're all happy at the end of the day. And we're not finding ourselves up here needing empathy. And some direction, it certainly going to the effort to represent this, that somebody wants to do the right thing here and so that everyone is kind of protected. We don't need to be elaborate about it, but I just wonder if you've seen the inside of the house and if the framing is, or if someone from the staff has seen the inside of the house and can provide, some level of, not direct supervision, we all have limited time, but that it's known where to start and stop.
Sure, yeah. We have good photo documentation
Right.
and Scott and I have been out a couple times. and
Should be
taken
more than
measurements,
sufficient
and- Yeah.
to help the cause. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Joseph.
Of course.
Applicant?
Hi, I'm Lynn Taylor, residential designer. I wasn't the one who drew the original drawings. They are really bad. Attic build-outs are more complicated than people think. And so Steve asked me to help him with this. He didn't understand, and he is paying dearly for it. So he will be removing the main roof. The original house is just one box, and the addition behind it is all non-historic. So the August meeting was the violation, and you all just reviewed what the drawings that were previously submitted. So I have been back out there a couple times and made a lot of measurements. And when I first went out there, I wasn't looking forward to it because I just saw the drawings and I thought it was really horrible. And so when I got out there, me and another architectural person the first thing we kind of just said at the same time that the existing that the dormers he had built on the back were proportioned to the back of the house, we felt. So we started talking and discussing it. And so he will be removing the main roof rafters and that knee wall, which is what Joseph and I talked about, taking that off totally. He's also going to have to move the stairs. So I told him that last week, because he has pushed the stair up against the existing windows, which have to go back in. So that's more money for him to spend. But today, and I believe staff has made a recommendation. I know it was, I had to ask Joseph several times about the recommendation, and I appreciate his patience with all my email questions, but they are approving the drawings I have submitted for the raised ridge. And Joseph had suggested that to Steve. And if I'd been involved in the project, this would have been what I would have designed to begin with, because of such a short roof on the house. And I believe if you look at the front elevation, all I have is what's there. I don't know what the house originally looked for, but I'm pretty good at proportion to ratio, and a roof eave looks about where it is from a picture that I have. I have a couple of pictures of the original house. And the rear dormers are like a 7-foot bearing plate or 6'11", and that's pretty short because most people come in here and ask for 9-foot tall dormers. And then the other thing is the dormers are set in on one side 4 feet from the original gable side of the roof, and on the other side it's 5'4". So it's set in quite a bit. The bonus for you is you have photos of it, and you can see the proportional ratio of the dormers on the back part. There was the original box of the house, and then at some point someone built another box on the back with a very low pitch roof, and there is a photograph of that which doesn't look good. And so the entire new roof on the back of that addition is what Steve built. And that's what we want to continue to leave there. And on my drawings, I show you the dotted lines of what we're going to have to demo and push down. And let's see what else. Since I submitted this, there's a house that has a rear addition right now with dormers on it about a half a mile away at 2113 Nance's Trace that was approved by the staff and the commission, and Joseph can ask more questions about it. I have some just printouts of a couple of things on it. The dormers are very similar on this one as with Steve's project. Actually, this one is much longer of an addition out the back. So with that, I will just wait and if you have any questions or any rebuttal or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Commissioners, do you have any questions for her at the moment? Okay, thank you. Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
So, just looking at the pictures. So is the applicant disagreeing with the staff recommendations or accepting them? Accepting them, right? Okay. It seems to be the case. It's a lot of drawings and a lot of,
I think this is a pretty straightforward one for us. Thank you, Lynn, for taking a horrible mess and making something acceptable to us out of it. Are there any that are within the guidelines? So yes, this is good. And unless there's any questions or comments, I'm ready to make a motion. With regard to 2223 30th Avenue South, I move to accept the staff recommendation with all conditions.
There's a motion and a second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, and thank you. That motion passes. Move forward.
All right, the next application is for 3805 Augusta Drive. This is an application to construct infill on a vacant lot in the Haynes Manor Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The top photo here is the subject property. The bottom photo are contributing houses directly to the right of the subject property. The historic context of the portion of Augusta Drive located in the Haynes Manor overlay includes one-story ranch-style homes and two-story split-form houses. The split form of the historic two-story houses result in a shorter ridge height than what you typically see for a two-story house. So those are, just for context, approximately 21 to 25 feet. So here are some additional context photos of contributing houses that show that mix of one-story ranch houses and two-story split forms. So the proposed infill is 2 stories and approximately 27.5 feet from grade, which is a couple of feet taller than the historic context. Since the infill is not a split form and since the ridge height is only approximately 2.5 feet taller than the historic context, staff finds that the additional height is unlikely to be perceived as overwhelming the historic context and can be appropriate in this case. The proposed width of the infill is 54 feet 4 inches wide at the street and widens an additional 6 feet to 61 feet 4 inches further back with that single-story bay. Two-story historic houses nearby are between 44 and 50 feet wide. You do see some wider one-story ranch-style houses, but those two-story split forms tend to be narrower. So staff finds that while that the building width of the proposed two-story infill should be limited to 50 feet, which is the upper limit that you see of the two-story context on the street, and since the proposed ridge height exceeds the historic context. So here's the proposed site plan. The infill has a front setback that is slightly forward of the historic one-story house to the right. But given the curve in the street at this point on Augusta, staff finds that the setback as proposed can be appropriate. As proposed, the infill is 10 and 11 feet from the right and left side property lines, which meets the base zoning requirements. However, staff finds that the resulting rhythm of spacing does not meet the historic context given the proposed two-story form. The proposed building width is approximately 11 feet wider than historic two-story houses on Augusta Drive. So while reviewing the project, I did speak with the project architect who indicated that the reason that the width had to be like this and the garage had to be in this location was due to easements on the property, as well as the narrowing of the lot from the front to the rear. So I looked into that. Here on the right, you see the 1968 plat, which is when this neighborhood was subdivided and created. You can see here, well, may not be clear, but on both plans, you do see just one easement. It's a 10-foot wide public utility and drainage easement along the left side property line. which, I mean, you see throughout. I included the overall plat in the staff recommendation. You do see similar easements throughout the neighborhood. In addition, the width of the lot is at the street is wider than most lots on Augusta Drive. It's 88 feet wide, and I think it comes out to be about 10 feet wider than most of the lots on the stretch of Augusta that are in the overlay. In addition, this irregular lot shape, it's just something typical that you see of neighborhoods that were platted with a curvilinear street layout versus the grid layout that we're used to seeing. So kind of looking into those two reasons further, staff did not find those to be reasons to have a wider building on this lot. So in this case, the building width appears to be driven by this two-bay front-loaded attached garage that is inappropriate for the historic context. The Haynes Manor design guidelines does recognize that attached garages can be characteristic of the post-war era. However, when you look on the street of Augusta and kind of some houses, the houses nearby on the streets that are kind of shooting off of Augusta Drive, you don't see any front-loaded attached garages. You see maybe some carports that were added to the rear, a definite pattern of narrower, like single car width, 12-foot wide driveways that extend from the street all the way to the rear of the house. So as a result, that is what staff would recommend here as well. So given the historic context, staff would recommend that the attached garage be located to the rear of the infill or be detached, and that the driveway not exceed 12 feet in width and extend to the rear of the infill. So those components together are kind of driving why staff finds that the overall project is inappropriate for the historic context. So. Here are the proposed side elevations. On the top, you see the right side elevation, the bottom, the left. And here's the rear elevation. So in conclusion, staff would recommend disapproval of the project, finding that it does not meet sections VA and VB1 for form and massing, VC 2 through 3 for setbacks and rhythm of spacing, and VC 4 through 5 for vehicular storage and driveways of both parts 1 and part 2, which is specific to Haynes Manor, in particular of the design guidelines for the mid-20th century districts. And just to note, staff really does try to make the recommendation be approval with conditions when possible. But in this case, we found that these issues, really to address them, would likely result in a redesign, hence why you're saying a recommendation of disapproval.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions to staff?
Yes, the applicant is here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not at the moment. Applicant?
Good afternoon. My name is Geeta Jackson. I am co-owner of the proposed lot, and this is my architect, John Ware. When we purchased the lot, we were not aware that we were purchasing a lot that was in a historical inlay. So I'm not familiar with some of the guidelines, but I tried to research, is it possible for you all to tell me when this became historical?
The overlay was adopted in 2023. So
In 2023?
Yes, it is recent.
As recent as, because we purchased the property in 2023, and the seller nor the realtor informed us that this was in a historical inlay. I own a home in Inglewood, and I'm kind of familiar with the guidelines of that. So I probably would not have purchased with all these restrictions, because this is supposed to be our forever home. And we had plans. We hired an architect that has worked diligently to try to revise and work within the guidelines. But let me get straight to it. I believe that, first of all, if we purchased the lot and it was not historical, are we grandfathered in first off under the old guidelines? Or do we need to meet these guidelines that are current? Because doesn't seem like that right there would be appropriate. But addressing the issues regarding the vehicle storage and stuff, John, would you like to speak on some of the?
Ms. Jackson?
Ms. Jackson, please.
Ms. Jackson, I think legal was about to give you some clarity on the timing.
I mean, that's really up to, as a buyer, you have to be aware of the property that you're purchasing. And the guidelines become effective when they're effective, and they are currently effective.
Okay, so if we purchased it and the guidelines were not in effect, is that what you're saying?
No, the guidelines are in effect currently.
Currently now?
Yes, right. So you have to meet the guidelines now for work that you're doing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the surveyor did the survey and pulled all the site information, he didn't find anything about the guidelines at that time either. So he provided the building envelope. That's what we use now as the setbacks, but that's okay. Most of the houses in this neighborhood don't have garages. Some of these have carports on the side. Some of these have single-car garages in the back that have been added. The house directly across the street has a double-loaded garage facing the road. I guess the main things driving the remarks are the front-loaded garage and the width of the property or the house. And when we pulled the different widths of the houses, the one, if you're facing the house, the one directly to the right is 63 feet wide. Two down is 90. One more is 79. Across the street from the right to left is 63, 58, 56, 47, 58, and 60. This is a wider lot at the front, but when it's pie-shaped back, the further you push the house back, of course, the narrower the setbacks get. So that's why we pulled the house forward just a little bit to try to get the width in. I guess what we're asking for is if the front-loaded garage is not going to be allowed, the guidelines actually do not say it's prohibited, it says it's rare, what the guidelines say. But if we can have a little leeway on the width of the house, we may be able to make it all work. But the 50-foot width is small. And the bump out on the right side of the plan that you see is Miss Jeter's closet. So that's going to be a hardship. But I guess those are the two main concerns, the front-loaded garage and the total width. Staff? Yeah, okay.
Staff recommend.
No, just other than that, I also noticed, and that's property 3804, that's almost directly across from the lot, that does have a front-loaded garage. So, and there are many lots that are many homes that do have front-loading garages. The width also exceeds, and I've noted several with double-wide driveways. But we were not trying to disturb the integrity of the neighborhood. We were trying to improve, not necessarily the neighborhood, but we wanted to build our forever home, but also build something that was pleasing to the eye. And I just ask for your consideration on these things because it's a smaller lot. My parents are older. They stay at 4313 Shadydale, which is actually not even 2.1 mile away. So that was the driving factor of why we chose that property. Being I knew it, the lot was a lot smaller than what we've been looking since 2015. And as you know, the market is not really, we don't have an abundance of things to choose from, but trying to be in that location to support our parents was a main reason. So we've had to compromise a lot. My ideal was not a front-loading garage. It was not a front-loading garage. And also, in order to get this project going, we've sacrificed a lot. So I just ask for your consideration in the matter and how we need to proceed to get it to have this project move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at the moment? Or her architect? Okay. We may later. Open public hearing. Does anyone need to, I know there was a lady here that lives in the neighborhood. I know she wasn't clear on some conservation overlay. Did you have any comments? I want to make sure, because you had mentioned that you were not familiar with this.
I wasn't familiar with overlays, anything.
Can you give us your name, please, and your address?
My name's Elena Parker. I live at 3824 Dunbar Drive. And I wasn't familiar with any of it, so I wanted to come to learn so I would know more about the neighborhood and what was required.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close public hearing. Commissioners?
I guess I'll just give some basic information for the neighbors and the property owner. That this is one of our, not our newest overlay district in Nashville, and it was roughly a year ago in 2023 that the Haynes Heights and Haynes Manor Neighborhood Association brought the conservation overlay of the neighborhood to this body and asked for these rules to be, the guidelines to be applied to the neighborhood. We welcomed several neighbors and people involved with the neighborhood association to our meeting and met them and learned about the history of the neighborhood and its architecture. And it was quite a big deal and kind of fun to meet them and see all the work that they had done, which also included, I believe, community meetings and neighborhood meetings and canvassing to let people know to the best of everyone's ability that these guidelines were going to be adopted and put into place. So just so you know a little bit of the background of where this came from. It's pretty recent history, and I know I was here and Dr. Williams were here. Several of us were here for the creation of the Haynes Manor Conservation Overlay. That said, I know a point was made about the home across the street with the front-loading garage. That building no doubt predated the adoption of the guidelines and the overlay, so we didn't have any review authority over it at that time. What we do have review authority is now is what the guidelines that were adopted, what they say about how garages and overall height and width of new construction since adoption in 2023. That's what we do have control over now. So sometimes applicants ask us to use previously built non-contributing buildings as guidepost for decisions we should make now, but we're caught in a place where we can't really use homes like that as examples for approving or disapproving. Just some info.
I think the other thing is the guidelines are available on the Metro website, on the Historic Commission website, and you can look up the Haynes guidelines there, and it describes all the requirements and all the details for it. So.
Okay, anything specific to the project? Maybe also for education part, I know it sounds like Ms. Jackson and Ms. Parker knew at this, is that that area is mid-century homes. So when you look at the context and that massing, what we call massing and rhythm of that neighborhood is historic to that period. So you might say, does my house, look like that? What does my neighborhood look like? So just as a general view, that's how this design overlay was created. So it wasn't our commission that did that. It was the neighborhood that would initiate that with their council person, and then these guidelines were not just out of the sky. They had some legitimacy to them. Commissioners on the project.
And I just might add for some context, this overlay was introduced at a time in its history where it's sorely needed because our African American communities were rapidly disappearing. I'm not sure now, maybe you have to get with staff on this, but we only have one or two of these type overlays in the city, three? Okay. So it's as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to lean very heavily toward being protective of these spaces. There's not very many of them, so I think we should be vigilant at working to keep their integrity intact.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think I just encourage the applicant to keep working with staff. I think you're probably pretty close. I know staff, as they mentioned, tries to get you there. Tries to get you an approval with conditions. I think you are getting leeway that you aren't an empty lot, that it is infill. Sounds like staff gave several grace, I don't want to say exemptions, but interpretations on several items. And I bet if one or two of those was addressed, we could probably get there. I don't think we're all that far away. And so I know it's a disapproval, but I think I really do think your architect and staff can probably get there and hopefully find a good way to build a forever home there that satisfies everything, hopefully.
I also think that one of the prime characteristics of the overlays is working to preserve the character of a neighborhood. We hear that from neighbors in every overlay, every neighborhood we have, they want to preserve the character. And certainly part of the character of this neighborhood, although you have one exception that was built before the overlay, is not having front-facing garage doors. It is a true character-defining element. It's a beautiful neighborhood, a lot of wonderful homes, and I think preserving that particular aspect is really important. So I think working with the architect and the staff, you can get there. I think, based on that and from what I'm hearing, I have to say that with respect to 3805 Augusta Drive, I move that we deny the project based on staff recommendations.
There's a motion. There's a second by Commissioner Williams. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you for your time. Commissioners, can I ask if we can have a 10-minute break? Okay. Thank you.
This is fun. Likely, but if you have the manufacturer's information or the name. If you have, again, before you purchase a just a good purchase is usually fine. But again, before you purchase it.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 18, 942 South Douglas. Oh, there we go. It was a circa 1955 brick house that was not contributing to the historic overlay. It has already been demolished. We issued a staff level permit for the demolition. The applicant proposes infill in an outbuilding. So here are some context photos. The context is largely 1 and 1.5 story houses. The top photo are the houses to the right, and the bottom photo is a house to the left. The house to the left actually faces 10th Avenue South, so it doesn't face Douglas. And then you can see the other houses behind it that are facing 10th Avenue South. And here are some more photos. The one on the top are the houses to the right of the proposed infill, and Directly across the street from this site is a stalled SP development, which you approved several years ago, but has not yet been constructed, or has been partially constructed. That's another story. So here's the site plan. The front driveway is existing, so that's why it does that weird curve. They're using an existing driveway. The infill and the outbuilding meet the base zoning setbacks. The front setback matches the front setback of the house to the right of it. Again, the house on the other side, to the left of it, faces 10th Avenue South, so we didn't take that into consideration for setbacks. Here is the front facade. The proposed is a 1.5-story building with a maximum height of 28 feet. That is in keeping with the historic context. The width is 33 feet, which also meets the historic context. Here are the side elevations. Overall, staff finds that the infill's height, scale, materials, and design meet the design guidelines and the historic context. They're also proposing an outbuilding, which meets all the design guidelines as well. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval with our standard conditions. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Melissa. Come forth, applicant.
How you guys doing?
We're good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I'm Paul Simu. I'm the owner of this parcel, and I'm the contractor as well. So this is something that I bought knowing that it was non-contributing. I'm hoping to build a 1.5-story home that fits within the guidelines of the Waverly Belmont overlay, I believe, and that's what I'm here for. So.
And you're good with all the conditions and
Yes.
requirements of the guidelines? Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. You've made our day. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Is there a motion, commissioners?
Madam Chairman, it is so delightful to see one that hasn't already been built and falls within the guidelines, complies with the guidelines, and heartily make a motion that we, with respect to 942 South Douglas Avenue, we approve this project with staff conditions.
There's a motion. Second by Commissioner Cotton. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Congratulations to the homeowner.
Okay, next up is an application for revision to an addition at 1402 Ashwood, a contributing structure in the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. So the commission approved an addition to this house in June, subject to conditions. At the time, the applicant was proposing to inset these side walls 2 feet, which staff and the commission agreed met the guidelines. The applicant has now requested to reduce that inset from 2 feet to 1 foot. A survey determined that the house is out of square by 6 inches, and the reduced inset request is to recapture that lost square footage. Staff finds that the guidelines require a full 2-foot inset, and a historic building being out of square is not an unusual condition. In addition, a 2-story addition onto a 1.5-story house is already outside the direction given by the design guidelines. But it was approved in this case because it was a small connector and had the 2-foot inset. The commission has been very consistent with requiring appropriate insets for additions, and no compelling evidence has been provided to support a change in that policy in this instance. Staff recommends disapproval of the proposed 1-foot inset, finding that it does not meet the design guidelines for the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. And I did just want to point out quickly, the applicant has provided examples of houses in Belmont-Hillsborough. I think they're going to show them here in a moment, with 1-foot insets on the ground floor. And I kind of quickly looked through some of the examples that they provided to see what might have been going on there. And most, if not all of those, had 1-foot inset on the first floor, but 2 feet on the second. That's something that's consistent with approvals in the past. It's something that we would support in this case, but they are asking for 1 foot on both the first and second floor here. So we're recommending disapproval of that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Questions for me? I know the applicant's here and wants to speak as well. Nope. Okay.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Applicant?
There.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Kovalik. I'm the owner and contractor. This house is a little bit unique now that we're in full construction, it's demoed. We've started excavation in the back for the foundation. this is a very narrow house. It's 31 feet outside to outside. However, the inside, we have furred the walls in to a 2x6 wall. The studs are, it's lath and plaster, so they're not plumb level, straight or square. So we're tacking 2x6s onto the existing studs. So by the time we're done with that, and with the constraints of brick, the air gap, the 1x4 sheathing, now the 2x6 wall, we're less than 29 feet inside to inside. Instepping 2 feet on each side kind of narrows the throat of that house as it enters the addition, which, because the house is so narrow and a 50-foot wide lot, we were able to step outside larger than the footprint of the existing house, which is great. And with the house being trapezoidal, there's one small, I'd be all for, it's really just the first floor where we have conditions where it's just very narrow. There's a pantry right off the kitchen into the addition, and that pantry with the 2-foot instep, and then that's the trapezoidal part of the house. So it makes it very difficult to get a functional pantry. It would also help in giving some width, another 6 to 8 inches in the width of the hallway, which is in the center of the house. So we just thought we're at this stage. It's worth asking for.
Thank you.
Sure.
For asking before doing. Okay, you have any questions to the applicant?
Oh. These houses are right in that 12th Avenue, Belmont Boulevard strip. Is that one a 2-foot inset also, Jenny? On the second floor?
Jenny, quick question. Did you say that we have approved and staff would be okay with a 1-foot inset on the first story and 2-foot on the second story?
Yes, so we have examples, and there's some included here. Maybe if we can scroll back 1 or 2, you'll see one where someone will do, like here, you can see on the first floor, that circled section is inset 1 foot. Above it, it's inset 2 feet. So that is something that we have approved in the past, and it's something that we would be supportive of here. It just wasn't the ask here.
Just want to make sure we don't forget public hearing if applicant is finished.
I have a question for the applicant then. Mr. Peters, is that right?
Kovalik.
Is this kind of situation, would that be acceptable to you to do a 1 and a 2, depending on the story?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it'd be great to have 1 foot on the second floor also, but it's where I'm constrained the most is on the first floor. So if that works, then that works perfect for us.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Mosley, I know you had a little look on your face. I just want to make sure. Okay. Architects, any questions? Vice Chair? Okay, we're going to open public hearing.
Thanks.
Which I was reminded of. Thank you. Anyone? Sounds like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Close public hearing. Commissioners?
I am in support of the staff's recommendation, but for clarity, 1 foot on 2 floors, no. But as has been pointed out by the staff and the applicant's photographs, it's permitted that you could, and we've consistently in this district allowed for 1 at the first floor, 2 at the second floor. That would be something that I think we could approve, and with the condition that the applicant submit a drawing for approval that could be inspected, and we kind of know what we're going to get at the end of the day. And also just want to reiterate and commend the applicant for coming to us beforehand as opposed to after. It's really helpful. Feels a lot better having this conversation than some of the others. So that was all I wanted to add. And with
I would invite you to make a motion.
all right. So with respect to
I've got a new chair now.
with respect to 1402 Ashwood Avenue, I would recommend, with new information provided here today, disapproval of an application for a 1-foot inset on 2 stories, but approval of an application with revised drawings submitted to and approved by the staff at staff level for a 1-foot inset on the first floor and a 2-foot inset on the second floor, and that some sort of roofed element would need to cover the difference between those two, a la the pictures that were presented by the applicant. Some solution to roof that difference and break up the 2-story element there would be approved.
Okay. I believe that is
And meet the guidelines.
yes, and meet the guidelines. And that is the motion. Is second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes.
Oops. Okay. Next is an application for a rear porch addition at 1609 McEwen, a contributing structure in Laughlin Springs East End neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. This house has an existing rear porch and an existing outbuilding. The proposal is to add on to the porch, which will create a distance of 5 feet 4 inches between the 2 structures. The guidelines call for 20 feet of separation. While the commission has allowed less than 20 feet in cases where there are special conditions, such as a truncated lot, an easement, or a particularly deep front setback, this situation has none of those conditions. The lack of separation has been created by a deep addition on the back of the historic house. And I did just want to point out, you can kind of see the tape measure there on the blue tape. That's the corner where the porch will go. If that makes sense. The addition itself is modest at only about 100 square feet and 1 story tall. The existing outbuilding was permitted in its current location because in that location it could maintain the required 20 feet of separation. While the proposed addition is modest, it will eliminate that appropriate separation. As such, staff finds that the addition to the screened porch as proposed does not meet the design guidelines, and we are recommending disapproval. Questions for me?
Jenny, then if this was to be approved, what is it? Less than 20 foot? What's the?
5 feet 4 inches.
Got it. Okay.
I know the applicant is here and would like to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Nancy Moore with the Porch Company, representing the client, Katie and Francois Jimenez, who could not be here today because she had her baby October 4th. And she wrote a really nice letter. In the meantime, I meant to distribute these. Thank you. She wrote a really nice letter I'm supposed to read to you guys, but in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of summarize that. And basically, she wants you to know she's a huge fan of historic architecture. She's an interior designer, and most of her clients are in the Laughlin Springs neighborhood. So she wants to comply with all the regulations and the intent of the rules. But in this situation, we think we're so close to the rules that we might fall on a little grace from you guys. So what I presented to you, I've got 3 pages. The first page is just a picture of the carport, because I wanted to emphasize that it is a carport. It's not a garage. It's not a dadu. Open air, 2 posts at 2 corners. Okay? And then the second page is kind of a zoomed in plot plan showing where the porch and the proposed porch and the carport, how they relate. And I did ask the staff what is the intent of that 20-foot rule? And it is to create the separation between the main house and the detached structure, which is normal for that historical context. So what I wanted to show you is that previously the garage was approved because it did not overlap the porch, all right? If you'll see on that structure, well, we have the 20-foot setback from the house to the garage. But where the current porch is, it's off to the right. And so the carport is not directly behind the porch. With this new addition, the overlap between the porch and the new addition is 3.5 inches. So we're kind of hoping for a little grace from you guys that you would allow us to build this little side porch. And then my one more argument I'd like to present is on the next page. It shows the property. And if it had been appropriate, that the porch would have been built to the side of the house, because they do have that nice big side yard, that we have that separation. We have the space on the property. But it was just because the house is long and narrow and the porch was built, which is not built by us, prior to us, the porch was built where it is appropriate, just off the end of the living room of the house. So that's where the porch went. And they're asking for this 10-foot addition because the porch is just not quite wide enough to have both a living space and a dining space. And they're really hoping to be able to use their porch for dining as well. So that's our case. We hope you will approve this project for us.
Questions to the applicant?
I do have a question. I understand where you're going with this. The overlap of 3.5 inches, is there a reason that the porch that's designed to be extended out 6'8" and 3/8 inches wouldn't be just as good at 6'5" inches?
Well, and the owner she said, if that's what they need us to do, we will do that. But she will have to release her her round dining table that she loves so much and has on her porch today, and have to buy a new table, more long and skinny, because it literally wouldn't fit in the space. So that's why we would like to keep it there if we can.
I just wanted some clarity. So this diagram that so this is what you're asking for, or this is an if?
The if is if the world were different, that's not possible, because the porch is already built.
Right. This is this way.
The one on the left is the one that we're asking for.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So we do have that separation. It's just not across the back. It's like this. So.
Okay.
Hoping you might go for that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
Do we have a recusal in this case?
Yes, I need to recuse myself. My dear friend is the applicant.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Duly noted, Commissioner. Commissioner Cashin has recused herself.
my friend is not the owner. Her name is on the application. Yeah, so. Just to clarify.
All right. I just want to make sure legal knows I've closed public hearing. Just want to make sure. Duly noted? Okay,
Yes,
thank you. I mean, we've had so much discussion today, so sometimes we might miss that.
Cyril, would you mind repeating your question about overlap and explaining that again, please?
It may not make any difference. I mean, the requirement's 20 feet separation between the two structures. I seem to remember in the past that there have been some situations where one structure was off to the side and there was no overlap. But I can't recall exactly whether that was the case. But, like was stated, the intent is to preserve a backyard and not to eliminate that backyard. So that was all I was thinking about.
To move this along, not advocacy necessarily, but one of the tests that's I often ask myself is were it originally presented with the porch extending nearly, not all the way, but nearly across the entire back of the house, would it, oh, I do need to get closer.
There you go.
Would this be acceptable? Would it meet the guidelines? Would whatever, all of the things that we take into account, would it be able to be approved or approvable in that case is another way of, I think, another way of looking this per the applicant's request. Or I think just another, I don't know if this is necessarily in contradiction to the staff, but to clarify that the porch itself is not in compliance with a 20-foot separation, measured building to building, but because, as Commissioner Stewart said, they're offset, it also is an open porch. It can be screened in, but it's not an enclosed three-season porch with glazing or whatever else on it. We would typically review that. I'm always wary of like this progressive sort of, I'll ask for this, and then this owner or the next owner, I need this and I need that. So none of these are absolutes, just things that we've considered and I consider in looking at this to help us.
Commissioner, are you saying it's not enclosed? I see a picture where it is screened with structure.
Screened-in porch
It will
being
be
different.
screened.
Yeah, a screened-in porch being different than an enclosed porch. Screened-in porches are not enclosed in terms of the guidelines.
Even if it has noticeable walls and roofing, etc.
I would defer to the staff's interpretation of that as well.
Let's maybe a window. Okay. I mean, I see that in picture 21, page 21.
And I'm not advocating for it. I'm just sort of trying to.
I just want some clarity.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And a screened-in porch would be considered an open porch rather than an enclosed addition.
Like with windows, etc.
Windows, doors, walls.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
I can remember a recent case where we went as close as 6 feet, but we felt that was pretty darn close. And I understand the wish to keep a dining table, but to me, that's not something that's really within our guidelines to consider. So I feel like 6 feet is a good minimum. And in this case, I'm supportive of the staff recommendation to disapprove.
Anyone else?
With that said, in regard to 1609 McEwen Avenue, I move for approval of the staff recommendation.
There's a motion by Commissioner Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mayhaw. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Commissioner Mosley has opposed. However, we have a quorum of the votes, and that motion passes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, for waiting to this late hour.
I took out the slides.
Which one are we hearing first? 1906 Fifth Ave, or are we?
Broad being heard? That was next on the agenda. Yep. Sorry.
Ms. Ziegler, can you clarify which one comes next? Okay.
Sorry, I thought we had another one, but I'm up. 1 second.
Which one are you presenting?
1906 Fifth Avenue North, sorry.
Gotcha.
Yes. Okay. So next is an application for an addition and outbuilding at 1906 Fifth Avenue North, a contributing structure in the Salem Town Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. We did receive a letter of public comment from a neighbor this morning. I hope you guys got a chance to see that. I printed it out and was going to bring it to you all, but I left it on my desk, so I apologize. I hope you saw it. If not, maybe we can read it later.
It's on SharePoint.
It is on SharePoint, yes. Perfect. The proposed outbuilding, we'll start there because it's the easiest part. It meets all the design guidelines with the conditions that the final materials are approved and the existing outbuildings on the site are demolished prior to the issuance of a preservation permit. Staff finds the outbuilding meets all of the design guidelines. The existing historic house is extremely modest. The original portion of the house is only about 660 square feet in footprint, 24 feet wide and about 19 feet tall from the top of foundation. The house is also greatly shifted on lot, sitting about 2 feet from the right side property line, so well over the setback line. Given all of this, an addition that was both taller and wider was approved in 2014, but never constructed. This is an application for a new design that is again taller and wider. This is the front elevation with the historic house in blue and the proposed addition surrounding it. The applicant is proposing a rear addition that steps wider than the historic house by approximately 20 feet. Given the conditions, staff finds that a wider rear addition could be appropriate here. Ideally, the rear corners should be left intact. This addition does inset and preserve the right corner, though it extends straight to the side from the left corner. Staff finds this could be appropriate here as the left corner was already removed for the existing rear addition. The guidelines do not allow for a side addition as well as a rear addition, but staff finds the small new front porch there on the left could be appropriate given its location and its open design. While staff does find that a wider addition could be appropriate here, staff finds that the proposed wider addition is too wide. The wider portion of the addition is nearly matching the width of the historic house, creating a total width of 43 feet, which is far too wide for a historic house on a 50-foot wide lot. The only other historic house on this block with a somewhat similarly sized lot, and that one is 60, so 10 feet wider, that house is only 29 feet wide. Further, the width of this addition is creating a front yard parking pad. Staff recommends that the width be reduced such that the sidewall sits a minimum of 12 feet from the left side property line. This would allow for a driveway to extend alongside the house and would create a total width that's somewhat more compatible with the historic context at about 36 feet wide. The guidelines allow for taller additions to a one-story house where up to 2 feet of additional height will allow for a usable second-story space. While this addition calls for 4 feet of additional height, staff finds that could be appropriate in this instance because the historic house is so modest. The taller portion is inset 3 feet 4 inches on the right side and steps wider on the left side. The taller portion is all roof as seen from the front and is fully pushed back off the historic portion of the house such that only the addition is taller. Staff does recommend adding an inset to the roof of where the addition connects to the historic roof. While staff finds that the proposed 4 feet of additional height could be appropriate, when paired with a significantly wider addition, staff finds that the overall resulting massing is too large and overwhelms the historic house. Beyond the massing issues, staff finds that the driveway should extend to the midpoint of the house and the materials need to be reviewed by MHCC. The applicant has agreed to inset the rear dormers seen here, the 2 feet from both sides. The proportion of the most spacings is appropriate and all setbacks are being met. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed outbuilding with the conditions regarding the materials and the demolition of the existing outbuildings prior to the issuance of a preservation permit. And staff recommends disapproval of the proposed addition, finding it does not meet Section 5 for massing of Part 1 of the Salem Town chapter of the guidelines. And it's a lot. If you have questions for me, happy to answer them. I know the applicant's also here and would like to speak. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Jenny, thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for your time today. My name's Chad Harris. I'm going to try my best just to use a couple of the minutes so that Elliot can have the rest. We're working together on this project. He's a building partner. I'm owner of Harris Properties. We're the ones who purchased this property 2.5 years ago. it's our desire to figure out a way to redevelop this property to where we can figure out how to build something that people want to buy. The problem is that this particular neighborhood and this particular lot, being that it's at the very end of the road, sandwiched against the interstate, you have a lot of interstate noise. It's not the most favorable lot in the neighborhood. We purchased it 2.5 years ago when the market was a little better than it is today. And we've spent that 2.5 years trying to figure out what we're going to do with this property and trying to keep out the squatters and keep the structure from falling in on itself. So I understand that the challenge is to the problem when we purchased the property, we acquired the set of plans that was just for a larger single family renovation and addition. The problem with that is when we started analyzing that and looking at that, the cost to build that was going to likely exceed the value and the sale price that we would, be able to get if we were to, once we were to finish that and put that on the market. So knowing that the zoning is R6 and, a lot of the properties around there that have been redeveloped are building 2 dwellings, we knew that it would be the most feasible for us to build 2 dwellings. And so once we kind of established that and got across that, I guess, question mark, and we realized, hey, this is where we need to try to put our focus. And then the next challenge was, how do we do that in a way to where both of those dwellings are going to be attractive enough for future homeowners and buyers, and also be large enough for what people are wanting to buy. I mean, things have really changed in that neighborhood over the past decade or more. Things have changed in Nashville. Density is, a big issue. Nashville is continuing to see new residents come here every day. So we're just trying to figure out how to build 2 dwellings large enough that people would actually buy them so that we can sell them and not lose our butts on this property. So any help you guys can provide, we are willing to figure out a way. We just know that if we squeeze the width of this so far, that it's just not going to be viable to build 2. We've worked with the architects on this at Foursquare, and we're kind of coming to this impasse where we're just like, how do we do this? How do we accomplish this? So we definitely want to work hard. We're actually finishing up an amazing historic project at 1406 5th in Germantown. Invite you guys to come look at it. We're about a week from being complete. So we value historic and we value the Nashville. I've been in Nashville for 20 years. I'm not just a fly-in developer trying to, do this for just money. I always take into consideration the neighborhood. We love the Germantown and the Salemtown areas. So just keep all that in mind. I'm going to let Elliot talk more details. Sorry, it took more time.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for staying late with us today. I wanted to speak to you.
Give us your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Elliot Perry. My company, EPCO, is the contractor of record on the application. And I just wanted to speak to you some of the points the staff brought up. Initially, first and foremost, there's the massing issue, and we'll come back to that. I'm sure you'll have questions for us. The first note that I have is on page 14 of the report, and it is the roof line. We are happy to make changes, cosmetic changes, if we can, if they're appropriate. The roof line you see drawn, and frankly, the plan you see in front of you on this application is our ideal. This would be great for us if we can do it. We know that it's going to need some tweaks, and we are happy to accommodate those, roof line being one of those. The driveway utilization, we put that in our plan. It is an existing curb cut. We would like to keep it. Again, we're not married to it. If that needs to go away to be appropriate for the neighborhood, we have another plan to actually shift the parking to the rear of the property and accommodate the Metro mandated parking guidelines in the rear property. So again, would love to keep it, not married to it. And then on page 18, they brought up the rear dormers. And I think we've already submitted a correction for that to accommodate and meet in there. So I want to get back to the massing. When Harris Properties purchased the property, there was a previous plan that had been approved. And we used that footprint we used as a large guideline for how we came to this sizing. I do believe our width is actually in line with the previous plan that had been approved. So what we're really asking you for is more depth on the project, or at least from the previous application. We're staying within the 42 feet width that had previously been approved, but we're asking for an additional 30 feet, and that 30 feet accommodates the second unit on that house. I know economics are really not your concern here, but it is. Getting to that second unit is going to be what makes this project viable for us, and we're just trying to find a path that everybody can feel good about. I know the neighborhood's behind it. We spoke with a bunch of neighbors. They're ready to see something happen there. But the historic elements are really, really small, and if we're using those as a massing guideline, it's going to keep us pretty limited. Any questions for me from a build or design aspect?
Not yet. Not yet. Takes us time. You know, you've got to give us a few minutes.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Open public hearing? Closed public hearing? There is a lot going on with this project.
I have a question for Jenny. Could you restate, I remember from the presentation, this was originally on consent agenda, so I didn't read the report as closely as I would have otherwise. The staff recommendation is willing to grant additional height beyond what might be found in the historic context, but the width is the primary issue here, or is it the depth?
It's a combination of the width and the height. The depth, we really weren't concerned about. It is very deep. That's not really going to impact the massing on the front here. So we felt like some extra height was appropriate in this case, perhaps. We felt like some extra width was appropriate, perhaps, but maybe not this much width. Typically a house in a 50-foot wide lot can't be any wider than 40 feet at most because of the side setbacks. Well, this house is already 3 feet over the setback line, so we're at 43, which is just a pretty wide house. Wider certainly than you'd see in the historic context here. We felt that the 4 feet, typically it's only 2, we felt 4 might be okay in terms of additional height, but not with this amount of width. So it's a combination of factors, really.
And I haven't been through Salem Town in a while, but there's kind of very little historic context there, right?
Yes. This block in particular, I think there's one other, well, no, there's a couple historic houses.
It looks like there's one across the street and maybe on the corner.
And yeah, I think one beside it. Yeah. But also there's wider lots than this one. So.
Yeah.
But this one's at the end and there's the interstate. It's a complicated, a complicated one for sure.
My just initial thoughts, I'll spitball a little bit, is because I am generally supportive of the applicant's effort to add two units where there's currently one. While we don't look at economics like was mentioned, we need more housing in Nashville. This is a weird lot. It's at the end of this, right up against the interstate. It's an exceptionally small house. And Salem Town doesn't, and this block doesn't have a whole lot of historic context. Anyway, so, I mean, I'm sort of persuaded to allow the additional width in this case in order to make 2 units work where there's currently just one.
Have we closed the public hearing? I was too deep into analyzing drawings. So, I just want to make sure we don't get too far ahead of us. So I agree, just Commissioner Price, with the analysis. When I'm looking at the screen at this one and I'm wanting to be permissive, but one of these things, but it's not quite one of these things is not like the other. it's like one of these things is leering over the other one. And to me, it's a combination of the extra roof height, because admittedly, the front house is very petite. The combination of raising the eave height and the extra roof height together just doesn't please my eye. And I know that's not written in the guidelines, but certainly that's a matter of scale, and the combination of those two things. I agree with the staff's analysis, not to the sense that like, oh, this is terrible, start over again. It is just too much. And I'm curious, and maybe this is a question to the applicant, who did say, this is ideal. We could bring the height down. I'm making these points is to say what direction could be given of what's permitted, because I too acknowledge it's at the end of the street. The context is limited. The combination of all the things, the depth, which is borne by the extra unit, I don't have objection to that. But the combination of the height and the depth and the second unit all go to, it's just like, it overwhelms the existing house to the extent that it's a bridge too far, at least on paper right now for me. Did that make any sense to anybody else? And I'm open to contrary opinions.
You mentioned you might be all right with a 12-foot driveway, and so that would bring us down to 41 feet?
So currently, let's see, if I included the site plan. Maybe I didn't. Oh, there it is. So currently, there is a curb cut, as he said. Currently, there's a driveway that goes all the way to the back of the property. They want to build wide enough that it will cut off that driveway. So they want to build to the side setback line, so just 5 feet from, yeah. So we are suggesting that they reduce the width by 7 feet to give them that 12 feet to run the driveway back.
I thought it was 10, and I was like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so something a little different.
So it's kind of a double request there. We don't want the driveway cut off in the front yard, and we would like the width reduced. So if you reduce the width, then the driveway can come back.
And in the end, this forces parking in the front yard, which that's really what in the past and in all of our districts is not optimal.
And there is an alley.
There is alley access.
There is alley.
So
Yes.
there's no there's no need for a driveway. I mean, you can do rear access here. And would that enable the width then?
We still find it to be too wide.
Right.
We just thought that kind of, those two elements married nicely together in terms of figuring out a number for width reduction. Without interrupting, if you do feel like you're leaning towards an approval, I have some conditions prepared. so
I would love to
shout
hear the
out.
conditions because I want to go to approval because I'm the same as I think as Commissioner Price. I have a bias towards more homes in Nashville, especially when we're dealing with an empty lot that it sounds like, and I don't know this to be true, but it sounds like is not the most ideal lot in the world. And is not going to be one of these, well, if these guys can't make it work, they'll just sell it and someone else will. It's likely you're probably going to have that dilapidated structure on there for years.
Until someone that's unhoused moves in and builds a fire and
until it's gone.
I believe we approved the permit in 2014, and I believe no one's lived in the house since then, so it's been a while. And what you're seeing here with the kind of rusted roof, that's the historic portion. That white roof in the back is the addition that will come off. So yes.
Please.
Okay. So I kind of went through the staff recommendation and pulled out our recommendation. So the typical, we would want to review the materials. We suggest reducing that width by 7 feet. So you're going to have 12 feet from the left side property line. We want to have them add an inset of the roof connection. I don't know if that was clear. And that was something he said they were open to, but it would be kind of, let's see if my cursor will. Are you seeing my cursor? No, you don't. It's kind of basically where the historic roof ends. Currently, they have just a ridge coming straight back from it. We typically require an inset, so we'd like them to drop the connection there just so you can visually see a break between the historic and the new. That's pretty standard as well. then we would like them to extend the driveway to at least the midpoint on the side there, or they could eliminate the driveway entirely if they want, just removing that front yard parking. And then the rear dormer being inset 2 feet on either side, which they've already agreed to do.
I know this neighborhood. It's next to mine. And it is a unique neighborhood because some parts are not on the overlay. I remember when this came up to be, approved for an overlay. And the houses are tiny. I mean, anyway, so it's always a challenge to get something in there. I don't know where I was going with that. But I have seen this property and right beside the interstate. So yeah, I'll think of something else that I was going to say, but it's a challenge to have this. But also just one thing, I would rather not see, and as the guidelines say, a parking pad in the front. That's not how this neighborhood is configured. It's not consistent with the historic pattern. I know you want to say something, but we've closed public hearing. Unless it's really significant that will help us, I would have to ask the commission if they would want to hear. So give yourself a thought a minute, because I would ask, but.
I think, this is a serious, piece of property, a serious neighborhood. I think if we could hear from the applicant what their thought is, that would be helpful.
Commissioners, you good with that? Legal, do we have to make a motion?
I have motion to reopen public hearing.
Okay, and that would be what, suspend the rules? We wouldn't have to do that. Just go.
Reopen public
Okay,
hearing.
all right.
I move that we hear additional comments from the applicant.
Motion, second by Commissioner Price. All right.
We have to vote.
Yes.
In favor?
All in favor? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Nobody's opposed to that, so.
All right, thanks. One thing, there's two things. When you drive up, the house, this structure that you see that's going to remain, the addition that's on the side is actually set back. So you won't even see that structure until you literally have to get to the very end of the road before you'll even see the addition on the left side, because it's set back. So I just think that will help that overall massing, concern. The roof, yeah, I understand. I see your point about the height of the roof. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the kind of the height that we would need to get in order to have a viable second level for that portion behind the existing structure. The other thing I was going to mention is, but to that point, the height of the roof and the overall massing is comparable to the building, the development right to the right of it, which is a 2-build, tall and skinny attached side by side, that takes up, the as much of the lot that they probably got approved for. I mean, they took up everything they could. So I don't think it's anything different from what's being done in that neighborhood. And in fact, I think it's comparable. And I assure you, it's going to look a heck of a lot better than it does right now with about I think it has 4 different structures on the property. It has a garage. That's where the homeless people are sleeping when they're there. It's got a chicken coop or something back there. I don't even know what it is. And then it's got another old structure. And it's just, we want to do something with this property extremely bad. But I will say that if we aren't able to get 2 dwellings that are feasible square footage, we're going to have to abandon this project altogether. And, somebody else we're probably going to lose money, and somebody else is going to be back here in just a matter of time trying to figure out what we're trying to figure out. So we are ready to greenlight this project from all other aspects except for this. So thank you.
Thank you.
I will say, I'm looking at the overall map, and I'm sure, like I said, this overlay is not just a block, but they're all duplexes to the setbacks. And
And those could have been before the overlay. There was a lot of build already prior to the overlay. That's the difficulty of having the historical, contrasting to a new build. That's the difficult part about Salem Town, honestly.
So what is the context of massing them? Is it just to the era as historically defined, like a mid-century home or whatnot? Because obviously it's not in comparison to the rest of the street.
I think that we can talk to that about that, but
Jenny, could you give us if we decide to approve this, could you go through your list of conditions again?
and so Commissioner Smith, also because it's being to the historic structure. That's the thing too. And the historic structure is very minimal.
It's historic.
Right? So they're adding it's an addition to the historic structure. And so that's where we are trying to get the context.
If it's helpful, the only other historic house on a comparably sized lot, that lot was 60, this is 50, was 29 feet wide. The house is 29 feet wide. So this is significantly wider. And additionally, because the existing house steps over the setback line, if you let the other one go all the way to setback, now you're wider than anything else can be. But back to the conditions, we would want to review the materials. We would ask a reduction in width. We suggested 7 feet less wide to make it 12 feet from the side property line.
And Jenny, what's the width on that now, on the recommendation?
Currently it's 43, so if they reduced it by the 7, it would be 36, is what we're recommending.
Okay.
So reduce that width, then run the driveway halfway back to the midpoint, or they could remove the driveway. We just don't want that front yard parking pad.
Right.
Adding that inside of the roof connection, and they've already agreed to inset the rear dormer 2 feet on both sides.
A one-way driveway might be 8 feet. I know there's nothing worse than someone up here spitballing when staff has done hours of work. So I'm cognizant of that. Just trying to find a way to preserve this house, because it doesn't look like it's going to be preserved another decade at its current pace.
And remind me, or state again, the reasoning for the 12-foot setback on the left side?
So we want the house to be narrower.
Yeah.
And also we do not want front yard parking. So typical width of a driveway is 12 feet. So that's we were looking for what's a good number on width reduction. That felt like a good place.
Thank you. So, it's one of the most unique, I think, sites, projects that we've looked at. And, if we go back to the things about the addition shouldn't be more than the square footage of the original house, that blows it out of the water completely. And so I think that the uniqueness of this site, being at the dead end of a street, and I think that we all want to see the older structures preserved. And to me, doing this project can help preserve that older structure if we find a way to make it work. And it's an interesting structure as it is when you look at the pictures of it. I mean, nobody's going to mistake that that's not one of the original structures that was on that lot when they see it, even with the mass of what's behind it. So, and I think that I agree with a lot of the staff recommendations if we approve it. And I think that we could craft a motion. I'll go ahead and try to do a motion to see if it works with people. So I would say that with respect to 1906 Fifth Avenue North, that we approve this project, that the materials shall be reviewed and approved by staff prior to purchase and installation, including doors, windows, garage doors, roofing, siding, trim, and foundation material. And that the existing outbuildings on site be demolished prior to issuance of the permit, and that that we approve the plans as submitted with the following conditions. Number one, that the side setback on the, I guess, planned north side of it be increased to 12 feet, that the roof be broken from the existing structure to the new as per staff recommendations, and that the rear dormer be modified per staff recommendations, and that the parking be eliminated in the front yard, with the applicant having the option of having a driveway that extends halfway to the rear of the house, of the structures, but no parking in the front yard.
Is your motion?
That's my motion.
That is the vice chair's motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cashin. Sure, discussion?
So in that motion, then it preserves the width of the house as submitted.
No, it increases the setback from the top of the lot from 5'2" to 12 feet.
Okay.
So that you can get the drive going up through there.
Okay, any other discussion?
Yeah. I think giving more clarity to the applicant and staff is very good. And I do think we are approving a plan that doesn't exist, which is fine for clarity's sake. I don't want to suspend the rules, but we might, I don't know, we might ask the applicant if that's something they'd like to do, or they'd like to try again. And they can probably try again with a new plan anyway. They're gonna have to come up with a new plan.
Right.
With the other, I just I don't want us to come with a good compromise with staff and be happy about it, and the actual applicant be the only one who feels unsatisfied. Just thought.
There is a motion on the floor, so we can you can see who's for it or not for it. There is a motion, so we have to go with the motion first. Now, if it fails,
Right, you could reopen public hearing if you prefer to.
Yeah.
At that point.
Maybe I could provide a little clarity. If you pass a motion saying, for example, they need to reduce the width by 7 feet, and they're able to do that, we will work with them. If they can meet the conditions that you passed, we will issue a staff permit. If we can't get there, then they can come to you back to you with something else.
okay? All right, so the motion on the floor is how Vice Chair Stewart has said it. It's seconded by Commissioner Cashin. You can make a choice. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, Commissioner Cotton has a nay. However, the majority vote is approved for that motion. Okay? All right. Any other? Okay. We commend you for bringing it before us to let us see it and do the ask before the doing. We want to commend you for that. And thank you for hanging in here. But as Jenny said, let's see what you can do, a little bit tweaking, see how this can work. We want you to hang in there and doing this because it's worthy. It's worthy. Hang in there because prices are going to keep going up. Hang on to that property. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, I think legal has,
Yes, so
From
300
counsel?
Broadway, so counsel for the applicant has agreed to defer that till the next
legal,
meeting.
can we make sure we have ears all over? Commissioners?
It's just a brief announcement.
Commissioners? Legal is, yeah, you can talk in a minute.
This is just very brief. Counsel for the applicant for 300 Broadway has agreed to defer it for a month. So we'll make sure it'll be on next month's agenda and you'll get all the materials And if we need to, we can do another executive session. If not, we won't need to.
Okay, sounds good. We appreciate the applicant to defer. And also, legal, I've asked legal to clarify a question that one of our commissioners brought up about writing notes about a project and what is our procedure for retention.
Sorry, just give me a minute. I'm just trying to unlock my computer again and find that email. Let's see. This is a good question, and I'm glad you brought it up. Let's see. Okay, so Commissioner Cashner had asked about what to do with her notes, and under the general record schedule for Metro, which sort of governs like what you have to do in terms of like document retention, there's a definition for working papers, and I think the personal notes that you take really fall under that working papers definition. And so the rule for that is that they can be destroyed when they are superseded, obsolete, or no longer needed. So when you don't need the notes anymore, you can just get rid of them, maybe shred them if you think they're sensitive in some way. As a general rule, I would say if you think it's a case that's going to come back before you and you're going to hear it again, if it's going to be a rehearing, if you think this person's going to likely to appeal and you might hear it again in 2 months, a year, maybe just hang on to those just for your own edification, just so you can remember what you were thinking about it before. So, okay. All right.
Counsel, would this apply to any notes, so inside or outside of the hearing?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, legal. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff, as always. And good evening.
Chair Bill, I have a clarification on
Yes, sir.
our admonition to applicants at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
I thought I heard that it said final plans. In the reference that you read, you should follow final plans, and there's wording there that
Final drawings.
final drawings. So final drawings could mean anything. I would say approved. I think it should say approved drawings, because final drawings, I would not know what a final drawing was if I were needing to defend that. Final drawings are the last ones that I presented. So that was something I caught as we read through that.
Legal, what do you think about that?
I don't know too much about the technicalities of what you people are presenting to you, so that's probably not a good question for me. I think whatever is approved, right, with the preservation permit, like that, those plans are what people have to follow, right?
So you want to say approved final drawings?
Yeah.
Well, it said, so here's a sentence. The final drawings are a part of the preservation permit.
I just think approval should be part of that. And an approval might happen subsequent to the approval that's heard here if there's a resubmission and the staff approves it. But somehow there needs to be a process that there's not a question, well, I met with them on the side afterwards and they said it was cool. That doesn't, I don't jive with that, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's the approved preservation permit incorporates those plans as submitted, right, which are what you approved.
Yes.
Or we could say of the approved preservation permit.
Yeah.
However it is, approval needs to happen.
I think final is insufficiently not specific.
And the preservation permit is the key. We always say, be sure you're.
I am of the opinion that there should be a set of documents that are approved.
Okay, we'll work on that. We'll work on that. We'll work on that with legal and Robin.
We can discuss, and that could be like a new business, that can be a business item at the end of next month's agenda, if you want to sort of wordsmith that together. Or approve new language.
Right.
Yeah.
With better wording. Okay, all right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.